Well, hello everyone, and welcome. And I believe there'll be a few people trickling in as we go. Welcome to Building Staff Capability. It's wonderful to have you all here today, and isn't it great to share knowledge and engage, from the home and doing it virtually? It's just a great outcome of, COVID and the, post-pandemic. So I'm really excited to share the next hour with you, talking about a really important subject, and that is building staff capability, people capability, and so forth. So first of all, let me introduce myself, Ramona Bullard. I'm a mentor and educator with TAFE Queensland Small Business Solutions. It's a division dedicated to learning for small business owners and managers. My background is 25 years in strategic leadership, company director, board roles, and educator, and mother for all those women out there in business. And having worked with over probably 350 SMEs from revenue from 1.5 to 100 million. Broad industry experience, manufacturing, construction, scaling businesses, and so forth. So just a little bit on the TAFE SBS program, which I'm a mentor for. The TAFE SBS program offers a program for small business delivered in an accelerated model. And it is for small business to help them manage their business planning and understand business functions. And it's a great way for them to, have a one-on-one mentor with industry experience and develop a business plan. For this year, it is fully funded by the Queensland Government, which is fantastic. So there is a link later on, which I've incorporated into the slides, where you can have a look at the brochure on that. So it's an accelerated mentoring delivery model, so one-on-one or one-on, short, small groups, like up to 6 people. Okay, so we're going to use the Q&A, which I'm assuming is a little bit like the chat. So feel free to, we're all friends here, to pipe up and, give your opinion or ask questions along the way. So building staff capability. So what's your experience with building staff capability and human resource development? In a few words, or, looking at these different diagrams, with these different images on the screen, which one of these images best associates or expresses your experience with building staff capability? There's a lot of different emotions there. There's positive emotions. It can be fantastic, positive, and sometimes it can, maybe not achieve what you expected it to achieve. So feel free to put it into the Q&A section and associate what your experience is with building staff capability and human resource development. And I'm sure Kenneth will let me know if anyone does contribute.
Will do. Thank you, Ramona.
So session overview, what are we going to cover in this session, in this workshop? We're going to look at the culture and purpose element, the role of human resource development, learning organisation, what's a learning organisation and where does that fit? Where does that have a role to play? Training and development, essential tools and techniques, and a capability building strategy. So culture and purpose, it's about sharing the destination. So the people in your business are aligned to the same mission. So a collective sense of belonging is what we're talking about, with culture and purpose playing a role. Okay, the role of human resource development in small business and capability development. It's called human resource development or staff development. There's lots of different names. But what is HR? It all fits within the human resources management function. So there's lots of different functions within human resources, isn't there? It's quite a complex and broad operational function. So what sort of elements, are part of HR? There's performance management, position descriptions, there's payroll, compliance. There's quite a lot, isn't there? And some of those elements really link in to human resource development, particularly the alignment between performance management and strategic direction, hence the purpose, the top point, bullet point. So let's see how they all relate. First of all, culture and purpose. Culture and purpose, why do you think culture and purpose are important? If anyone would like to put some comments in Q&A, please go ahead. I'd like to get your take on it. Basically, it's about sharing the destination, as I said, that collective sense of belonging and understanding the strategic direction, where the business is going, and for staff to feel like they're part of that journey as well. So on the culture side, there's a process called a climate check, which is really checking the temperature of an organisation in terms of the culture. Because as business owners, you can believe that your culture is fantastic or not very good, but because you're not necessarily independent or impartial, it may be quite different to what you think. So understanding the pulse of your organisation and how people feel and how you might be able to improve the organisation can be really valuable. And it can have a really great influence on morale as well. So a climate check is like a survey. It can be an employee opinion survey, something like that. And a lot of them are done electronically now. So is your culture, think about it, is your culture what you think it is? And before you move into staff development, which requires investment, it's a good idea to understand if there are any issues. So a learning organisation is the next concept I'd like to talk about. So what's a learning organisation and how do you become a learning organisation? Do you want to? A learning organisation behaves in a particular way. It aligns beliefs and values with the behaviours that are expected in an organisation, particularly when it relates to learning and development. Proactively sharing goals and purpose, and collaboration and empowerment. Also working on things like social capital. Now, social capital is a fairly contemporary concept in human resource development, but it's really about making those connections in the workplace and connecting the dots and building the capability within the team and the social capital. So human resource development in small business. How would you define human resource development, staff development? Is it part of the human resource management function? Well, yes, it is. Human resource development is organised learning activity. Organised learning activity to improve performance or personal growth for the job, the individual and the organisation. So it's not just for the individual, it's obviously going to be for the organisation as well, to help the organisation achieve performance objectives or strategic direction. So it refers to operational activities as well as a wide range of organisational strategies. So policies and plans, things like that need to be in place for human resource development to work efficiently, and practices. Practices particularly around what's called the human resource cycle. So it encompasses the broad area of training, development, and career management. So just for your knowledge, within the HR function itself, there are 12 different activities or functions within that. So there's quite a lot to think about. So the more you can automate, and there's lots of options these days with technology, the better, because there is quite a lot of administration and face-to-face time in human resource management. So what do you think are some other human resource functions which really relate to human resource development and developing staff? So once again, it's recruitment and selection, making sure you're getting the right people at the right time in the right roles. And performance management as well. So human resource development, it does play an important role in determining how you manage your people in a changing world and a changing work environment, and contributes, of course, to organisational goals and competitive advantage. In some organisations which are highly innovative, like engineering firms, it can be their strategic advantage, their people. So putting people first. So I'm just going to play a short video on Simon Sinek. Now, hopefully some of you have seen and are aware of Simon Sinek. His videos and his teachings are quite interesting. This is about putting people first, but also getting the balance can be quite challenging. So I'll just play this for you.
Ramona, just want to let you know there's no volume coming out of that one, unfortunately.
There's no
volume.
Is that better?
No, still can't hear anything.
Okay, so all right, so we might just include those for you to have a look at in your own time.
I will send them out, Ramona. Yeah, I'll send
Yes.
them out as a post-event. Yeah.
Excellent, because one of them is 8 minutes, later on, and takes quite a bit of time out of this workshop. So good for you to be able to have a look at that yourself in your own time.
Excellent.
All right. So it's about what Simon talks about when you hear it. It's a great little video about getting the balance right. And sometimes there's decisions that have to be made that can be competing with culture and performance and putting people first. Ultimately, the message there is the bias is to put people first while you're getting a balance. So I hope you enjoy that video. Okay, a learning organisation is an important concept these days in human resource development and building capability. What sort of organisation do you want to be? Do you want to be a learning organisation? What does that mean? So a learning organisation is very skilled at creating and acquiring and transferring knowledge. In a company, there's always, challenges like an aging workforce or knowledge workers that contain or keep quite a lot of knowledge within a small group of people, and that's quite a risk for a business. So a learning organisation works on knowledge acquisition, distribution, interpretation, and developing the organisational memory. So what that means is acquiring and transferring knowledge, having a shared philosophy and culture around learning in the organisation. Modifying behaviour to reflect new and knowledgeable insights, and creating the organisational memory is really a systematic thing, has to be ongoing, and it's a cultural, focus as well for the organisation. So why do organisations need to learn? What's the importance in learning for organisations, do you think? Is it something that every organisation needs to do? Well, they need to learn because survival is the underlying motivation for organisational learning due to the markets changing, technology's changing, businesses change. There's automation, there's so many influences and changes in the way we do business. So the dynamic nature of all of these advances, that means there's no such thing as a permanent competitive advantage. So a learning organisation do have an advantage. Learning organisation, the concept is also linked to systems thinking. And if some of you out there are familiar with systems thinking, it's really about considering the parts of a business and how they connect and formulate as part of the whole. So connecting the components existing within the company as well as the entire company. Because each part of the business has an influence on the rest. But sometimes the influence that these different parts have, like learning, is hidden from view and you don't necessarily see it. So interrelated processes and, different parts of an organisation, different divisions, they all contribute to the overall success of the organisation. So by making organisational learning systemic, it becomes probably an easier concept is it becomes the way you do business. It's embedded in your processes, a hub and spoke approach. Okay. That's a learning organisation. A little bit more on that. It actually provides human potential for all employees. So people are humans and it looks at the organisation as valuable due to the people and the strength they bring to the business. So human potential for all employees is the view of a learning organisation. It's where employees continuously learn new things and apply what they've learned to improve product, service and quality. They have an enhanced capability to learn and capacity to adapt and change. Manage knowledge, ensure workers have the skills required to perform jobs in a changing work environment. And managing knowledge and ensuring workers have the skills for future jobs as well. So is your organisation a learning organisation? And if you wanted to move your organisation in that direction, they're the sort of things that are worth thinking about embedding into your processes and into your company. So training and development is the other item that we're looking at here. Another key concept for building staff capability. So training and development, training is not so much used anymore, that word. It seems to be changing more to learning and development. That seems to be the contemporary approach. But basically it means the same thing. So how to become a learning organisation, employee development, continuous learning, continuous training and development. That plays a key role. Information sharing, collaboration, team building, etc. And that shared purpose as well, building that into the development side of things. So where does training and development fit? So it's part of the story of staff development, but it's not the full solution. Training is a way of addressing existing internal skill and knowledge deficiencies. So measuring that, benchmarking that, rather than just providing training because someone asks for it. It's about working out what's needed. Where are the deficiencies in the organisation? So addressing the knowledge and skill gaps. And you could do that through a training need analysis, what's called a TNA. They're usually conducted on 3 levels. That's organisational, task, and individual analysis. So what's needed at an organisational level? You might be going through a transformation, new products, big system changes, a culture program. That's organisational. Task and individual, self-explanatory. More related to the job that people are doing. So who should be involved in the training and development? Typically senior managers, of course, and line managers, but also others involved in the particular training activities. So that way there's involvement and there's support from management. And therefore you're going to expect and receive more traction from the workforce. So identifying training needs and performance. So once that's done, then a training schedule and plans are prepared and shared with senior management, reviewed thoroughly and finalised to be able to go to the next stage and implement. Does that all make sense? Any questions so far? So training and development continues. So what are the limitations of a training needs analysis? Well, it's only the existing deficiencies of today. So it's only the existing gaps. So it doesn't serve the business strategic objectives by identifying maybe external skill issues, that might be impacting through new technology, etc. So organisational learning or forecasting skills and competencies required in the future, 5 years down the track, 3 years down the track, doesn't necessarily cover those requirements. So a way of dealing with some of those deficiencies with training needs analysis is linking in with your performance management process. So the performance management process, it involves 2 parts really. It's not like it used to be in the old days where it was a big stick approach and, quite stressful for all parties and very much about the boss measuring the performance of an employee, a one-way discussion. It's much more become powerful conversations and much more of them on an ongoing basis. So that's what it's about. And they also include not just looking at performance, but also having an individual plan, individual learning plan. So that's part of the performance management process now and links in with what training and development might be needed. So it's an opportunity to link broader development opportunities into the process of building staff capability. So other opportunities may be, customer knowledge transfer. There's lots of opportunities there for linking in future skills requirements. So what are the types of workplace training? At the moment, there's VET system accredited training, of which the TAFE SBS program is. That's a certificate 4. Lots of times they end up with a qualification. That's certificate 4 in entrepreneurship and new business. So they're accredited. You end up with a qualification and they may be also quite often government funded or government funding available. There's technical and product related training, organisational development, which I've talked about, and on the job and off the job training. So they're the different types of workplace training. VET system training is usually delivered by RTOs and TAFEs. And delivery of training is through trainers, experts, mentors and coaches. Now, it's a great idea to develop some of these mentors and coaches internally to be able to develop the next level of talent and succession in the organisation. Now, succession planning isn't something that we're talking about today, but it is also a really important topic to consider when you're looking at workforce planning. So another important element for training and development is, of course, the delivery and the evaluation of the training. So you're investing in, in resources, sending them away to training, and that costs money. So it's an investment. So you want to look at making sure that you get a return on that investment. So are the employees satisfied? Were they engaged? Were there achievements of learning objectives in the training? Was there a transfer of knowledge? Can you see it in the workplace? Are there improvements? What are the business outcomes from the training? And evaluating that is important. So evaluation of training is something you think about how you're going to go about doing that before you commence with the training. So training and development, there's on the right there, that's really a diagram of human resource development factors or considerations within an organisation. So there's quite a few to consider. So I mentioned earlier individual learning plans that are linked to the performance management process. A great way to identify training and development that's going to be of value for the organisation. Professional development, it can be upskilling, job rotation, lots of things there that you can do. Also linking to other HR practices. Obviously, it reflects organisation and individual goals and making sure the training and development that you're planning does do that, does align. So having good strategic alignment with goals. Now, the developmental aspect of training development is highly valued by employees. Why is that? It represents the point by which the employee's needs to develop their own employability skills intersects with the competitive needs of the business. So that development side of training and development is really important and provides return on investment, actually. Research and current research and reports indicate that training and development does provide, if it's planned and strategic, a definite return for organisations. So let's have a look at some of that in the next slide. But in terms of training and development, an example is a truck driver receiving training on maybe new road rules for, transport legislation that might have changed, Department of Transport. Would that be training or would that be development, for example? Have a think about that. Feel free to put your answers in the Q&A. What about if that same truck driver receives mental health and wellbeing training or a program they can attend? What would that be? Would that be training or development? Yeah, so in the first case, it's training. It's filling a niche, a gap, and it's technical, somewhat task related. Whereas the second example would more likely be development, because it's more about personal development and strengthening the individual. Okay, so there's an example of the difference there. Let's have a look at these statistics. Really interesting research here done by Deloitte Access Economics and Deakin University, 206 organisations surveyed, but I've seen this outcome, these sorts of results reported with McKinsey & Co as well. So Australians business invest roughly $2,500 per employee on training on average in 2021. And you can see the different types of training that they implemented. So the most common benefits as well, productivity, upskilling and employee retention. But the interesting thing is the report finds that on average, every dollar invested in learning and development per employee is associated with an additional $4.70 in business revenue per employee. So that's significant, isn't it? So for every dollar, a return of $4.70. So a great investment, investing in people. So capability people, just looking at the time here. Capability building, moving on to the how and what that is, and expanding it a little bit more strategically from just the workforce planning, because I think that's the value, particularly for small business. Little businesses need to think like big businesses, and that way they're ready to scale and grow. So what are the building blocks, according to McKinsey & Co, for capability building? So this is off a very current and recent report that McKinsey & Co have done, and I like their reports and research because they're very contemporary and they do cover quite a large cohort of companies. So the building blocks are capability building changes the way people go about their jobs. That's really what you're looking for, isn't it? Not training for the sake of training. So at the core, it strips the workday down to its most basic components and rebuilds it, embedding new habits around time-worn tasks. So quite often, you're engaging in staff training to get change, to activate change and improvement. So lessons from basic to technical and functional or development. So the purpose of capability building is to learn. Now, it can be simple things, very basic things like holding more effective meetings, reducing them from an hour to 30 minutes. But that might save the organisation quite a lot of time in a big organisation. It could be something functional or technical, like a welding certification, or more functional, like financial analysis and reporting. So they're the different types of learning that you can engage staff in. And they all have their place and purpose, as long as they're meeting a gap or a future need as well, future requirement. So behavioural science tells us that a lot of businesses, almost the majority, fail on three key elements when they're implementing change or capability building programs. And these three elements, which they've distilled it down to, really interesting. They are leadership role modelling, widespread employee engagement, and virtual mixed delivery. Very much the virtual. So it all sounds quite common sense, but it doesn't happen. Hence the behavioural science element there. So let's talk about that a little bit more. Capability building, leadership role modelling. What does that mean? It means the research tells us that people mimic both consciously and unconsciously the actions of individuals and groups around them, particularly leadership and those of influence within the organisation. So one of the best ways to drive adoption or new mindsets and behaviours in an organisation is ensuring the senior leaders model the desired change. So when employees see highly visible colleagues behaving differently and getting involved, it reinforces this new behaviour, and it signals a commitment to transformation. Now, example of this is I headed a organisational development change program for a large organisation, 1,500 people. Part of that was leadership training. All of the 200 managers went through that training, plus there was other training for other, individuals and other staff. In the frontline management training, the directors who have got, many degrees and managers in this organisation took part in the frontline management training eagerly. And that really made a significant difference, and it was talked about. It created a real buzz. So that's a good example of what I'm talking about there. Indeed, when senior leaders role model and behaviours change, that influence can make it more like up to 5.3 times more likely to be successful. So transformations are 5.3 times more likely to be successful when there is leadership role modelling. That's what I'm talking about there. So senior leaders modelling the desired change is really important. And it's often a good idea for them to be, and not only senior leaders, but the influencers to be the first participants to complete maybe a capability building program. And it helps to build that energy as well. Widespread employee engagement. So what does that mean? Well, what it means is to be able to have successful transformation and capability programs activate in the workplace to have impact. The tipping point is at least 25% of the workforce needs to be engaged. So what we're saying here is a transformation program, participation must be sufficiently widespread for the program to work. So even when propelled by the top level management, it needs to be scaled well beyond just a few rounds with a few chosen few, if that makes sense. So scaled beyond the chosen few to at least 25%. So remember that tipping point. It's really quite engaging when you get to that level. That's when you start to see what's called transformation. So why would anything less than broad engagement defeat the purpose? That's why. So deeply embedded behaviour needs critical mass. And targeting influencers first, as I mentioned, is a great way to get the whispers out there and to engage, to get that social capital happening, to get people on board and committed. And then the last one, the last of the three behavioural science elements, key elements, is shaping the new learning environment. So incorporating a strong element of virtual where you can is really important. It's part of capability building in the post-COVID-19 pandemic age. And it means it can be deployed anywhere as you grow. It's got scalability. And capability building easily lends itself to the virtual learning environment like we are today. So there's evidence to suggest that the virtual environments can deliver experiences that are equivalent or better than those in the traditional in-person programs. So it's important to incorporate that virtual learning environment in your delivery model. So the most significant aspect, and well, very important aspect for a capability building program is the global reach. That's a game changer. So if you're an international company or you do international trade and export, you've got people moving into different countries, a fantastic way to enable your capability building program virtually. So really important three elements there to consider when you're looking at a staff capability program. Some contemporary issues in human resource development that I wanted to share with you. The organisation, the learning organisation we've talked about, and I think you can probably see the value in, trying to establish yourself as a learning organisation, especially when skilling and, getting staff, obtaining staff in a tight workplace, a tight market can be quite challenging. So a learning organisation can be a good way to attract people as well. The emergence of a corporate university. Very much ties in what I was talking about earlier. Corporate universities, development centres, virtual partnerships with TAFEs or, universities or educational groups. A lot of those partnerships are happening to bring that learning hub within the organisation, and it works really well. Technology adoption, it's just gone crazy in recent years, and it's going to become more and more advanced and automated. So in the HR field, you've got people analytics, data-driven insights, you've got data-driven organisations now. So different apps that you can use to make your life easier and engage staff more and on a live basis is fantastic. And finding the right balance is the key. So some examples there are, these are software packages. Culture Amp is one that really incorporates culture and insights. Very clever app. So external, internal analytics, Life Pulse, so a constant climate check on the organisation, performance management and functional. Another one is Employment Hero. They look after compliance sort of elements as well. Almo is another one. So there are a few out there, and I encourage you to, have a look and see what sort of aligns with where your business is. Workforce planning. That's another very contemporary consideration, which is very much a focus now. It's about forward planning for your workplace challenges and your workforce challenges. Think about an aging workforce. These are things that we all deal with in our businesses. Attrition, it's going to happen. Diversity, including a more diverse and inclusive workplace, and having more of that dynamic in your business creates more creativity and bigger returns, the research shows. Flexible organisational structures, the right people at the right place at the right time. So there's some of the contemporary considerations, but a real central focus for building capability and building capability strategy, and something practical for you today is workforce planning and some workforce planning tools that you can use to help you on your way and to get started. So what we have here, this is out of a workbook and out of some resources developed by Queensland Government, fantastic resources for small businesses, any businesses actually, any business size. It's a workforce planning toolkit, and it goes through, the different stages that you need to go through, provides guidance and also templates, which can take a lot of your time developing templates. So really fantastic resource here. So building capability involves workforce planning. It's about planning for the people who are going to help your business deliver the products and services and for your customers and achieve your business objectives. And finding the right people at the right time in the right positions. So here are the different phases. This is the model for workforce planning in this particular resource. The key steps involved in workforce planning outlined are identifying your business goals. So number one, make sure you've got your business plan and you're focused, you've got your strategic direction, and you've got some measurable targets. So you've got your business goals. Know your current workforce. You need to measure what your skills and what your experience, your strengths and weaknesses are right now, to know what needs addressing, what are the gaps, and then be able to forecast and plan for what you need in the future. So forecast your future workforce needs is the next step. Develop strategies and actions to address your workforce gaps. And that equals your workforce plan. This whole process is ongoing. implementation, monitoring, and reviewing. Happens on an ongoing basis, starting with your business planning, and it's all cyclical, all fits in together. But you do start the right bottom icon with the strategic direction and the strategic focus, which is 2 years or more, and then work backwards. So they are the 4 stages to workforce planning. And I very much encourage you to overlay them with strategic human resource considerations that we've been through, which is culture, learning organisation, purpose, making sure you're focused on, you know, the why in the business and where you're heading as an organisation. The key behaviours, leadership, role modelling, 25% plus employee engagement, and shaping your learning environment to be effectual and to activate virtually and face-to-face environments. It's important to remember that workforce planning doesn't need to be complicated, but it requires thought and engagement with your staff and key people and having those powerful conversations. So the links on the previous slide, which I'll just show you quickly, are links to DESBIT or Job Skills Queensland, where you'll find these workforce planning toolkits, including templates and a guidance document as well, and a workbook. There's another link there for business.gov.au, which has also got some fantastic templates for building capability. And at the bottom is the TAFE SBS Small Business Solutions program, which helps you develop your business plan and also learn about the different functions of your business with a mentoring style delivery mode. Okay. Does that all make sense? I'll take some questions and answers shortly, but basically that's a wrap. We've covered quite a few areas, culture and purpose. We've looked at quite a few areas of human resource function and the link of strategy and culture in an organisation, learning organisation, what that means for an organisation and systemising it, making it part of the culture. Training and development, planning, organisational, functional, technical, and more training and development functions. Capability building strategy. So how we actually go about kicking off and integrate planning to achieve strategic alignment between the business plan and the workforce plan processes, incorporating things like performance management and individual plans as well. So thank you very much for listening, guys. Think about where you are in your journey and where you'd like to go with your capability building, and armed with some new insights and tools, I hope you're feeling more confident to take that next step in your business. So thank you very much. Now I might just thank you very much for listening, everyone, and lovely to have you along.
Thank you, Ramona. There was actually, Ramona, thank you. There was actually a question that's come through around workplace culture. So how do you effectively plan with a culture that's got challenges ingrained in it? So that was a question that's come through.
Yeah, that's a really, really challenging area and a challenging place to be in an organisation. You'll find a lot of the culture change programs are devised because of, or programs that organisations activate are responsive because they've got a culture problem. Not in all the cases, but in some cases. So typically the first good step is to make sure in the background you do have a good HR system in place. So your HR cycle is managed. So that means your recruitment selection, your performance management, those sorts of practices are in place so that you've got good, good processes to fall back on to manage staff development and performance. But if that is all in place, the first step is really a climate check and understanding what are people thinking, and getting that feedback and engaging the workforce is the first positive step of boosting morale, because you're talking to them. So that can be done a number of ways. Surveys, it can be done through apps, and it's great if you can. You might need to incorporate expertise externally, but do as much as you can through their guidance yourself, because consultants are sometimes a little bit far removed. And find out what the pulse is. Use that feedback, which typically communication comes up, specific areas that are impacting the poor culture come up. It might be there might be loyalty issues, or there might be something to do with hours people work. Could be anything. But getting that feedback and then coming up with a strategy, like key result areas from that feedback, so that you can go and shape your culture building program around what the needs are.